We live in a world that constantly tells us to buy more, have more, and be more. But what if true happiness isn't found in what we own, but in how we think? Ancient Stoic philosophers discovered this secret thousands of years ago, that peace comes not from endless consumption, but from mastering our desires. Today, we'll explore 7 money traps that drain both our wallets and our well-being, and how Stoic wisdom can help us break free. Lesson 1. Avoid fleeting trend buys. How many times have you purchased something simply because everyone else seemed to have it? The latest phone model, trendy clothes that will be out of style next season, or gadgets that promise to revolutionize your life, but end up collecting dust in a drawer. These fleeting trend purchases reflect what the Stoics would call an external validation of our worth, seeking approval and acceptance through material possessions rather than inner virtue. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." This profound insight cuts to the heart of trend-based buying. When we purchase items solely because they're trending, we're admitting that our sense of worth depends on keeping up with others, a race that has no finish line. Stoics practiced what they called voluntary discomfort, deliberately going without certain comforts to remind themselves that happiness does not depend on external things. Try waiting 3 months before buying the latest trend. Ask yourself, will this matter to me a year from now? Does this align with my deeper values? Often, the urge passes, and you'll find yourself grateful you didn't jump on the bandwagon. Consider how quickly trends come and go. That must-have item from last year is likely forgotten now, replaced by something newer and shinier. The Stoics would encourage us to find value in things that last, wisdom, character, meaningful relationships, rather than fleeting material goods that quickly lose their appeal. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, reminded himself daily, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." When tempted by the latest trend, remember that true contentment comes from within, not from external validation or temporary pleasures that new purchases provide. The dopamine hit from a trendy purchase fades quickly, but the financial impact may linger much longer. Instead of following trends, develop your personal style and preferences based on what truly brings you lasting satisfaction. This doesn't mean never buying anything new. Rather, it means making conscious choices aligned with your values, instead of being pulled along by the current of popular opinion. This mindful approach to consumption honors what the Stoics valued most, living in accordance with nature and virtue. Lesson 2. Resist emotional impulse. Buys, we've all been there, feeling down after a long day, and finding ourselves clicking buy now for a quick mood boost, or celebrating good news with an unplanned shopping spree. These emotional impulse buys speak directly to what Stoics identified as one of the greatest human challenges, allowing momentary feelings to drive important decisions rather than reason and wisdom. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave before becoming a renowned Stoic teacher, taught that make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. This perspective offers powerful protection against emotional spending. It reminds us that while we can't always control how we feel, we absolutely can control how we respond to those feelings, including the decision to spend money as an emotional reaction. When we buy something to soothe negative emotions or amplify positive ones, we're reinforcing the false belief that our well-being depends on changing our external circumstances rather than managing our internal responses. The relief or joy from impulse purchases is nearly always temporary, while the financial consequences can be lasting. Stoics would argue this approach gets the equation exactly backward. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, can be adapted to combat impulse spending. Before shopping, especially online where purchases are just a click away, pause and ask, am I buying this because I truly need it, or am I trying to buy a feeling? Will this purchase still seem important once my current emotional state has passed? Create a simple waiting period, even 24 hours, before completing any unplanned purchase. Another powerful Stoic technique involves distinguishing between things that are in our control and things that aren't. Your emotions arise spontaneously and aren't always in your direct control, but your spending decisions absolutely are. By separating these two, you can acknowledge difficult feelings without automatically reaching for your wallet as a solution. Consider creating alternative responses to emotional triggers that don't involve spending. If you're feeling down, perhaps a walk in nature, calling a friend, or practicing meditation would address the actual need more effectively than a purchase. If you're celebrating, maybe sharing the moment with loved ones or recording it in a journal would create more lasting happiness than buying something. Remember what Seneca advised. He is a great man who uses earthenware dishes as if they were silver, but he is equally great who uses silver as if it were earthenware. True freedom comes not from having whatever you want whenever you want it, but from wanting what you already have. This shift in perspective breaks the link between emotional states and spending habits. Lesson 3. Don't seek worth in things. One of the most insidious traps of modern consumer culture is the subtle message that our worth as human beings is somehow tied to what we own. We're encouraged to believe that the right car, house, watch, or wardrobe will somehow signal our success, status, and value to others and ourselves. This mindset runs completely counter to Stoic philosophy, which places human worth firmly in our character and actions, not our possessions. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, taught his students in a simple colonnade rather than lavish buildings. His choice represented the Stoic belief that wisdom and virtue need no fancy trappings. When we seek worth in material goods, we hand over our self-esteem to objects that can be lost, stolen, damaged, or simply fall out of favor. The Stoics would find this not just unwise, but fundamentally misguided. Consider how this pursuit affects us psychologically. When we believe our worth comes from things, we're never secure. There's always someone with more, better, or newer possessions. This creates a permanent state of insecurity and dissatisfaction, what Stoics would recognize as a self-imposed misery. No matter how much we acquire, the goalpost keeps moving if our sense of value depends on comparison with others. Epictetus advised, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This wisdom flips the entire equation of worth and ownership. Rather than seeking value by accumulating more, we find freedom by desiring less and recognizing that our true worth lies elsewhere, in our wisdom, kindness, justice, courage, and moderation. This doesn't mean living without appreciation for beautiful or useful things. Stoics weren't ascetics who denied all pleasure in physical goods. Rather, they advocated proper perspective, enjoying what you have without becoming attached to it or believing it defines you. Marcus Aurelius, though emperor of Rome with access to unimaginable luxury, reminded himself to prize simplicity and not be seduced by wealth's trappings. A practical application of this Stoic principle is to regularly evaluate your belongings and ask which ones truly serve your values and which merely serve your ego. Which possessions facilitate meaningful experiences or necessary functions, and which ones are primarily status symbols. This reflection often reveals how many things we buy not because they improve our lives, but because they boost our image. The Stoics would encourage us to invest instead in what they called our internal goods, developing wisdom, practicing virtue, cultivating meaningful relationships. These are possessions that can't be taken away and that truly reflect our character. When we shift our focus from external validation to internal development, we free ourselves from the endless treadmill of consumption and find a more sustainable source of self-worth. Lesson 4. Be aware of ad influence. Every day, we encounter thousands of advertisements designed specifically to bypass our rational minds and create desires we never knew we had. These sophisticated messages tap into our deepest insecurities, aspirations, and needs, promising fulfillment through products. The ancient Stoics didn't face Madison Avenue or targeted social media ads, but they understood the principle perfectly. External forces constantly work to shape our desires, often against our best interests. Stoicism teaches that freedom begins with recognizing which thoughts are truly our own and which have been planted there by others. As Epictetus put it, make it your study to distinguish what is yours from what is not yours. When we apply this wisdom to our consumer behaviors, we can start to see how many of our wants have been carefully cultivated by marketing designed to create perpetual dissatisfaction. The average person is exposed to between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements daily. Each one suggests, however subtly, that something is missing from our lives. Each creates a small gap between our current state and an idealized future that supposedly comes with purchase. The cumulative effect is a constant sense of lack, precisely what Stoics warned against as the enemy of contentment. Ads work by creating artificial associations between products and fundamental human needs. A car isn't just transportation, but freedom and status. A beauty product isn't just cosmetic, but self-confidence and acceptance. Once we recognize these manufactured connections, we can begin to separate our authentic needs from those engineered by marketing teams. The Stoic practice of mindful attention offers powerful protection against advertising's influence. Before making a purchase, pause to identify exactly what need you're trying to meet and whether the product in question is truly the best way to address it. Often you'll find the real need is for rest, connection, meaning, or security, none of which can genuinely be purchased. Marcus Aurelius advised himself, "Take away the judgment, and you have taken away the passion." Applied to consumer culture, this suggests examining the judgments that advertising attaches to products. Does owning a luxury watch really make you successful? Does a new kitchen gadget actually make you a better cook? By questioning these automatic associations, we reclaim our power of choice. Creating physical and mental space from advertising is another Stoic-inspired strategy. Consider periods of ad fasting, where you deliberately reduce exposure to commercial messages. Unsubscribe from marketing emails, use ad blockers online, limit social media use, or cancel catalogs. Notice how your sense of need shifts when you're not constantly reminded of what you supposedly lack. Remember that advertisers spend billions researching how to influence your decisions. This isn't a fair fight. It requires conscious effort to maintain your independence of judgment. The Stoics would remind us that true wealth lies in wanting what we already have, not in endlessly acquiring what clever marketing convinces us we need. Lesson 5. Overcome hoarding fears. Many of us hold on to possessions we no longer use or need because of subtle fears about the future or attachments to the past. Our closets, garages, and storage units fill with items just in case, or because it might be valuable someday, or it reminds me of a special time. This tendency to hoard reflects what the Stoics would identify as our struggle with impermanence and uncertainty, two fundamental aspects of human existence they taught us to accept with grace. Seneca addressed this directly. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who hankers after more. Hoarding behaviors often stem from an anxiety about scarcity or loss that no amount of accumulated possessions can truly soothe. The Stoic remedy begins with recognizing that security doesn't come from what we own, but from our capacity to adapt to changing circumstances. The philosophy of Stoicism emphasizes premeditation of evils, regularly contemplating what it would be like to lose possessions, so their absence wouldn't be devastating if it occurred. This practice isn't meant to induce anxiety, but to liberate us from it. When we face our fears of loss directly, we often discover our resilience is far greater than we imagined, and our need for material security blankets diminishes. Consider the physical and mental burden of maintaining excess possessions. Each item demands some portion of our attention, care, space, and energy. The Stoics prized simplicity not from asceticism, but because they recognized that possessions often end up possessing us. As Marcus Aurelius noted, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The fear behind many hoarding behaviors is that we won't have what we need when we need it. Yet paradoxically, hoarding often makes it harder to find and use what's truly necessary. By keeping our spaces and lives cluttered with just-in-case items, we create exactly the scenario of scarcity and frustration we were trying to avoid. The Stoic approach would be to trust in our ability to solve problems as they arise, rather than attempting to anticipate every possible future need. There's also an environmental and communal dimension to overcoming hoarding that aligns with Stoic values. Items we're storing without using might serve genuine needs for others. The Stoics emphasized our connection to the larger human community and would approve of ensuring resources flow to where they can be best utilized rather than sitting unused in our personal stockpiles. A practical approach inspired by Stoicism would be to regularly review your possessions with clear-eyed assessment. Does this item serve a current purpose or bring genuine joy? If not, acknowledge the specific fear or attachment keeping it in your life. Then consider whether holding on to the physical object is truly the best way to address that emotional need. Often you'll find that letting go creates a sense of freedom that far outweighs any theoretical future utility. Lesson 6. Consider the life energy cost. When we consider buying something, we typically focus on its monetary price. But Stoic wisdom invites us to consider a deeper calculation. How much of our life energy, our time, attention, and vitality, does this purchase actually cost? This perspective transforms our understanding of value and helps us make truly aligned spending decisions. Every dollar we spend represents time we've exchanged for money through our work. To calculate the true cost of a purchase, we need to translate its price tag back into life hours. If you earn $25 per hour after taxes, a $100 item costs you not just $100, but 4 hours of your life. The Stoics, who placed enormous value on how we use our limited time on earth, would ask, is this exchange worth it? Seneca, who wrote extensively about the proper use of time, observed, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. When applied to consumption, this insight reminds us that each purchase represents not just money spent, but life energy that can never be recovered. The Stoics would encourage us to ensure this exchange genuinely serves our deeper values and purposes. Beyond the initial cost, many purchases demand ongoing investments of our life energy. They require maintenance, cleaning, updating, storing, insuring, and eventually disposing of. A larger home means more time cleaning and maintaining it. More clothes mean more time managing your wardrobe. More gadgets mean more time learning how to use them, troubleshooting when they break, and researching replacements when they become obsolete. The Stoic concept of voluntary simplicity takes on new meaning when we consider the life energy cost of consumption. Choosing to own less isn't about deprivation, but about liberation, freeing our most precious resource, our time and attention, for what truly matters to us. As Marcus Aurelius advised, get rid of the judgment, get rid of the I am hurt, you are rid of the hurt itself. Consider also how working to fund unnecessary purchases affects your well-being. Are you working longer hours, taking on more stress, or commuting further to support a lifestyle filled with items that don't add proportionate value to your life? The Stoics advocated for sufficient wealth to meet genuine needs, but warned against the endless pursuit of luxury that demands ever more of our limited time. Epictetus, who experienced both extreme poverty and comfort in his lifetime, taught that freedom comes not from satisfying all desires, but from cultivating appropriate ones. When we evaluate purchases based on their life energy cost, we naturally become more selective, choosing only those items that offer value commensurate with the irreplaceable time they cost us. Before your next purchase, try this Stoic-inspired practice. Calculate how many hours of work the item costs you. Then ask whether spending that same amount of time on activities aligned with your deeper values, connecting with loved ones, developing wisdom, serving others, or simply being at peace, might bring more lasting satisfaction than the item itself. Lesson 7. Value experiences over stuff. Modern research confirms what Stoic philosophers intuited thousands of years ago. The happiness derived from experiences tends to last longer and run deeper than that from material possessions. While objects depreciate, break down, and eventually become obsolete, memories of meaningful experiences can appreciate over time, becoming cherished parts of our life story and identity. Epictetus taught, Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This wisdom pairs perfectly with prioritizing experiences over acquisitions. Experiences satisfy our deeper human needs for connection, growth, meaning, and joy, without adding to our inventory of items that must be maintained, stored, and eventually discarded. The Stoics understood that the richest life isn't filled with the most expensive things, but with the most valuable moments. Consider how differently we relate to experiences versus possessions. We tend to compare our material goods with those of others, a never-ending competition the Stoics would recognize as a formula for discontent. But our experiences remain uniquely our own, less subject to the corrosive effects of comparison and envy. Your hike through the mountains, your family dinner, your moment of learning or achievement, these can't be measured against someone else's in the way that cars, homes, or watches might be. The anticipation and remembrance of experiences also bring joy in ways that stuff rarely does. We look forward to trips, concerts, or gatherings for weeks or months, deriving pleasure from the anticipation itself. Then we carry the memories forward, often with growing appreciation as time passes. Material purchases rarely generate this extended timeline of enjoyment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This perspective helps us recognize that the most meaningful experiences don't necessarily require great expense. A conversation with a friend, time spent in nature, learning a new skill, or contributing to your community can provide far more lasting satisfaction than many costly possessions. This doesn't mean never buying physical goods. Even Stoics acknowledge the need for the necessities and tools of life. Rather, it suggests evaluating potential purchases through the lens of experience. Does this item enable meaningful experiences? Does it align with what I've found truly brings me joy and fulfillment? Would the same resources directed toward an experience serve me better? The Stoic emphasis on living in accordance with nature also supports prioritizing experiences. As humans, we are naturally shaped by what we do far more than by what we own. Our identity, character, and wisdom develop through our experiences, our travels, relationships, challenges, and learning. Material possessions, by contrast, often serve more as props or signals than as genuine contributors to our development as human beings. Next time you're considering a significant purchase, try this Stoic-inspired reflection. Imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back. Which would you more likely count among your life's treasures? The object you're considering buying, or an experience that same money could fund? Which would have more profoundly shaped who you became? This perspective often clarifies what truly deserves our limited resources. In embracing these Stoic principles about consumption, we aren't denying ourselves pleasure or comfort. Rather, we're reclaiming our autonomy from a system designed to keep us perpetually dissatisfied and spending. The ancient wisdom of Stoicism offers a radical alternative to consumer culture, finding abundance through wise desire rather than endless acquisition. Remember that Stoics weren't against owning things entirely. They simply recognized that possessions are tools to be used for a good life, not the good life itself. By bringing mindfulness to our relationship with money and material goods, we free ourselves to invest our true wealth, our time, attention, and energy in what genuinely matters. As Seneca wisely observed, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more